You wake up in the new world thinking you're part of the most dangerous generation of pirates in history. You've got a devil fruit that can manipulate reality, hockey that can split the sky, and a bounty that makes Marines wet themselves. But here's the thing, every single member of the worst generation carries a fatal flaw so devastating that it could destroy not just them, but everyone they care about. And the most terrifying part? These aren't random weaknesses, they're psychological time bombs, built into the very powers that made them legends. Stick around because we're about to expose why being a supernova means carrying a curse disguised as a blessing. Let's start with the future Pirate King's most devastating secret. Luffy's greatest strength isn't his gear transformations or his conqueror's haki. It's his ability to make people believe in impossible dreams. But this same power comes with a cost that's literally killing him. Second gear forces his cardiovascular system beyond human limits, shortening his lifespan with every use. Rob Lucci explicitly warned him about this during their Enice lobby fight.
つまりドーピングのようなものか。足をポンプにして血の流れを加速させている。常人の体ならば心臓が張り裂けるほどの血圧にも内臓も血管も全てがゴムならば耐えられるゴム人間ならではの技だ。身体能力は確かに極限以上にも跳ね上がるものの貴様の体力そのものがその強化に耐えかねている。あまり利口ではない。命を削っているんだぞ。
Each time his heart pumps at superhuman speed, he's trading years of his life for momentary power. Even after the time skip, the fundamental cost remains. But the real fatal flaw runs deeper than physical damage. Luffy's complete inability to prioritize means he'll always choose the most dangerous path, if it means saving one more person. Remember Impel Down? While his friends begged him to escape, he dove deeper into hell itself to save Ace, gathering an army of the world's most dangerous criminals in the process. Here's the psychological trap. Every person who follows Luffy becomes his responsibility, and he's proven he'll sacrifice strategic advantages, crew safety, and his own life rather than abandon someone who believes in him. Marineford wasn't just about saving Ace, it was about proving that Luffy's promises mean something, even when keeping them seems impossible. The cruelest irony? The more people who believe in Luffy, the more impossible decisions he'll face. Each new island means new friends to protect, new promises to keep, new reasons to throw himself into battles he has no business surviving. Zoro's fatal flaw isn't that he gets lost. It's that his directional blindness is just a symptom of his deeper inability to ask for help when he needs it most. The world's future greatest swordsman has turned self-reliance into a death sentence. Every time Zoro wanders off, he's unconsciously proving his worst fear, that he's not reliable enough to be Luffy's right hand. His navigation problems force him to depend on others constantly, which directly contradicts his identity as the crew's protector and Luffy's most trusted fighter.
目を離した隙にゾロが待てゾロそっちじゃねえよ何階段で行ったのにどう間違ったらそっち行くのよファンタジスタかうるせえお前の説明が悪いんだろ
Remember Thriller Bark? When Kuma offered to let him take all of Luffy's pain and fatigue? Zoro didn't hesitate, but here's what makes it devastating. He absorbed damage that would have killed most people, then refused medical attention and told everyone nothing happened. That wasn't just badass. It was Zoro's pride nearly murdering him rather than admit he needed help.
なんだこの血の量は！おい、おめえ生きてんのか？あいつはどこだ？ここで何があった？何もなかった。
The psychological torture continues every day. How can he protect his captain when he can't even navigate to the next island? How can he be the reliable first mate when the crew has to constantly rescue him from his own terrible sense of direction? His commitment to never backing down, never showing weakness, and never asking for help has created a situation where his greatest victories come at the cost of nearly dying. Every fight ends with Zoro barely conscious, having pushed himself beyond his limits because admitting he's outmatched would contradict everything he believes about strength. Kid's fatal flaw reveals the most brutal truth about power. When your entire identity is built on being the strongest, every victory just raises the stakes for the next. His magnetism doesn't just attract metal, it attracts conflict, enemies, and increasingly impossible challenges. Here's the psychological nightmare. Kid's magnetic powers perfectly reflect his personality. He pulls everything toward him but struggles to truly connect with anything. All that metal, all that destruction, all that overwhelming force, and he's still fundamentally isolated by his own strength. Kid's rivalry with Luffy and Law isn't just competition. It's existential terror. When they achieve their goals, when they grow stronger, when they form bonds he can't understand, he threatens his entire sense of self-worth. His magnetic field becomes a metaphor for how he interacts with the world, drawing everything in through force rather than genuine connection. Remember Wano? Kid finally learned to work with Law against Big Mom, achieving Devil Fruit awakening through cooperation. But even in victory, he couldn't admit they were partners. He had to frame it as competition. His need to be seen as the strongest made it impossible to acknowledge that their teamwork was what made the victory possible. The cruelest irony? Kid's magnetic powers make him incredibly dangerous to his own crew. Every time he unleashes his full strength, his risk crushes his allies along with his enemies. The captain who wants to protect his people through overwhelming force is trapped in a power that makes close relationships literally dangerous. Law's fatal flaw exposes the devastating cost of trying to control death itself. The man who can cut through anything, rearrange reality within his room, and perform medical miracles has spent so long manipulating others that he's forgotten how to save the one person who matters most, himself. Every use of his Ope Ope no Mi is a reminder of what he lost. Room isn't just a sphere of influence. It's a manifestation of his desperate need to create spaces where he has absolute control, because he never wants to feel as helpless as he did watching Corazon die in his arms. Here's the psychological torture. Law's entire battle strategy is based on calculated exchanges, precise movements, and predictable outcomes. The trauma isn't surgical, it's messy, irrational, and impossible to cut away cleanly. When Doflamingo forced him to relive Corazon's death, when the Celestial Dragon's bullet hit the target, Law's surgical precision crumbled into desperate rage. Most heartbreaking truth? Law's alliance with Luffy wasn't just strategic, it was hope. He needed to believe that someone like Luffy, someone who charges headfirst into impossible situations and somehow makes them work, could break through the walls he's built around his own heart. The cost of depending on others terrifies him. Every time he opens up, every moment he lets his guard down, every tactical decision based on trust rather than calculation, it's a risk he's not sure he can afford to take again. Hawkins' fatal flaw reveals the most existential horror of all. What happens when you can see multiple futures but realize you're powerless to choose which one becomes reality? His cards don't just predict outcomes, they trap him in a predetermined script he can read but can't rewrite. The Straw Fruit doesn't just let him redirect damage, it forces him to live with the knowledge that every person who dies for him is following a fate he saw coming but couldn't prevent. Those voodoo dolls aren't just meat shields, they're reminders that his survival depends on other people's predetermined deaths.
わずかだが重要なのは誰の命か
Here's the psychological nightmare. Hawkins isn't making strategic decisions about probability. He's following the path of least resistance, because his cards convinced him that fighting fate is futile. When his tarot reading showed a 1% chance of survival against Kaido and 0% chance of escape, he didn't choose collaboration. He chose inevitability. Remember his final confrontation in Wano? Even when faced with death, Hawkins pulled one last card, hoping for a different outcome. But the real tragedy is that he'd spent so long following his predictions that he'd forgotten how to make choices that weren't predetermined by supernatural forces. The man who can predict anyone's fate became a prisoner of his own foresight. Every victory feels hollow because he saw it coming. Every loss feels inevitable because the cards never lie. Hawkins isn't living his life. He's watching it unfold according to a script written by forces beyond his control. Drake's fatal flaw exposes the psychological hell of living a double life so completely that you forget which identity is real. The Sword Agent has spent so long undercover with the Beast Pirates that the line between his marine loyalty and pirate persona has completely disappeared. His ancient Zoan form is perfect symbolism. He's literally a relic from a different era, trying to survive in a world that's evolved beyond his understanding of justice. Every transformation reminds him that he's caught between two extinct concepts: the Marines he thought he served and the pirates he's learned to understand. Here's the psychological torture. Drake can't fully commit to either identity without betraying everything he's learned about the other.
ルフィこいつはホーキンスと同じカイドウの傘下に落ちたやつだ
だが今はその立場を追われた
追われたからこっちにつくだと
んな尻軽野郎信用できるか
When pirates need him to be ruthless, his sense of justice holds him back. When Marines need him to be loyal, his experiences with pirate crews have shown him that the world's government isn't always right. The worst part? He's been undercover so long that he's starting to genuinely respect his pirate allies, which makes his eventual betrayal feel like murder. Every bond he forms, every moment of genuine camaraderie, every time someone trusts him, it's another knife he'll have to twist when Sword demands results. Drake isn't gathering intelligence anymore. He's slowly disintegrating. Each day undercover is another piece of his true self that dies. Another memory of who he used to be that gets buried under the weight of who he has to pretend to be. Apoo's fatal flaw reveals that devastating cost of turning creativity into destruction. Every song he plays, every beat he drops, every musical attack he launches is another step away from the artist he once dreamed of being, and closer to becoming a living weapon.
Zoro!
His sound-based devil fruit should make him the most versatile fighter, able to attack from any range, bypass physical defenses, and coordinate battles through rhythm. But here's the brutal irony. The more he uses music as a weapon, the more he loses his ability to appreciate music as art. The psychological damage runs deeper than anyone realizes. Apoo can't hear a melody without calculating its destructive potential. He can't enjoy a song without analyzing its tactical applications. Music, which should be a source of joy and creativity, has become nothing but a tool for violence and survival. But here's the cruelest twist. His desperate need for attention and relevance has made him a perpetual sellout. He betrays alliances, switches sides, and sacrifices loyalty for survival because he's terrified of being forgotten or left behind. The DJ who should bring people together through music keeps tearing them apart through treachery. Remember the rooftop battle? While others fought for dreams and principles, Apoo fought for screen time. His attacks weren't strategic, they were desperate attempts to prove he belonged in that legendary confrontation. The musician who could have been remembered for his art will only be remembered for his betrayals. Killer's fatal flaw exposes the most heartbreaking truth about loyalty. Sometimes loving someone means enabling their self-destruction, and the cost of perfect devotion is your own identity. The man behind the mask has sacrificed himself so completely for Kid's dream that he's forgotten he ever had dreams of his own. His spinning scythes and incredible speed make him a perfect assassin. But every life he takes in Kid's name is another piece of his soul that dies. The mask isn't just hiding his face, it's hiding the slow decomposition of everything that once made him human. Here's the psychological horror that breaks hearts. When Killer was forced to eat the defective smile fruit, he lost the ability to express any emotion except laughter.
おいキラーこいつを食えばキャプテンを救うチャンスをやるさあどうする
kid, his best friend, the person he'd sacrificed everything for, didn't even recognize that the laughter was screaming. The most devastating moment wasn't the smile fruit itself, it was realizing that his sacrifice had become invisible. His suffering became comedy, his loyalty became a burden that kid couldn't even acknowledge. Killer's greatest fear came true. His devotion meant nothing, because it had become so expected that it was taken for granted. Now he's trapped in a body that betrays his emotions, serving a captain who doesn't understand the depth of his sacrifice, wearing a mask that becomes more real than the face underneath. The man who gave up everything for friendship discovered that true loyalty means watching the person you love destroy themselves while being powerless to save them. Urouge's fatal flaw reveals the spiritual connection that comes from finding enlightenment through suffering. The Mad Monk's ability to convert damage into power isn't just a fighting technique, it's a religious philosophy that's slowly destroying his soul. Every hit he takes, every wound he accumulates, every moment of pain he transforms into a strength, is teaching his brain to associate suffering with divine blessing. His devil fruit isn't just changing his body, it's rewiring his understanding of what it means to be holy. Now here's the psychological nightmare. Urouge has convinced himself that pain is purification, that damage is devotion, that surviving torture brings him closer to divine truth. But this isn't enlightenment, it's addiction. He needs to be hurt to feel powerful, needs to suffer to feel worthy, needs to bleed to feel blessed. The most tragic irony? His time on Sky Island should have taught him about the beauty of freedom, the joy of endless horizons, the peace that comes from rising above conflict. Instead, he learned that the only way to touch heaven is to first experience hell. And now his wings aren't lifting him up, they're carrying him toward his own damnation. Remember when he defeated Snack, one of Big Mom's sweet commanders? It wasn't a celebration of strength, it was a religious experience. The monk who should bring peace instead brings violence wherever he goes, because his faith has become indistinguishable from his bloodlust. Bege's fatal flaw exposes the deadly paradox of absolute protection. The stronger your defenses become, the weaker everything inside them grows. The Mafia Don's castle fruit should make him invincible, but it's slowly turning him into a monument to his own paranoia. His ability to house an entire army within his body seems like the ultimate strategic advantage until you realize the psychological cost. Every person he protects inside his fortress becomes another hostage to his fear, another reason he can't take the risk necessary to achieve his goals. Here's the psychological torture. Bege's need to control every variable, protect every ally, and plan for every contingency has made him incapable of accepting that some victories require sacrifice. This fortress mentality means he'll always choose safety over success, protection over progress, survival over dreams. The cruelest irony? His experience at Whole Cake Island should have taught him that perfect planning means nothing when faced with chaotic personalities like Luffy. But instead of learning to adapt, he doubled down on control. Now he's building bigger walls, stronger defenses, more elaborate protections, each one making him more isolated from the world he's supposed to conquer. Bege isn't a Don anymore. He's a prisoner in his own power, watching the world change through fortress windows while convincing himself that staying safe is the same as staying alive. Finally, Bonney's fatal flaw reveals the most devastating truth of all. Sometimes the power to change everything comes too late to save the one person who matters most. Recent revelations confirm that Bonney is actually a 12-year-old girl with the power to manipulate age, making her situation even more heartbreaking. Her devil fruit is the cruelest joke in the One Piece world. She can make anyone any age she wants, but she couldn't prevent the years of experimentation and torture that turned her father Kuma into a mindless cyborg. She can restore youth to strangers, but couldn't restore humanity to the man who sacrificed everything to protect her. Here's the psychological nightmare. Every time Bonney uses her power, she's reminded of her own helplessness. She can age enemies to death, but couldn't age herself fast enough to fight the world government when they came for Kuma. She can restore vitality to anyone except the person who needed it most. The most heartbreaking truth? Bonney's pursuit of the world government isn't about justice. It's about a little girl trying to find someone to blame for losing her daddy. She's aging herself through stress and rage, becoming older and more bitter, while desperately trying to reclaim a childhood that was stolen before she understood what she lost. The child who controls age is trapped in the worst possible moment of her life, unable to move forward because the past keeps pulling her back, unable to go back because the future demands a revenge she's not strong enough to achieve. Here's the most devastating realization. These aren't random character flaws, they're the inevitable consequence of gaining world-changing power without the wisdom, experience, or emotional support necessary to wield it responsibly. Every supernova represents a different way that extraordinary ability can corrupt or destroy ordinary humanity. Luffy loves too much, Zoro fights alone, Kid attracts destruction, Flaw controls chaos, Hawkins surrenders to fate, Drake loses himself in lies, Apoo weaponizes art, Killer sacrifices identity, Urouge sanctifies suffering, Bege builds beautiful prisons, and Bonney wages war against time itself. The worst generation isn't called that because they're evil. They're called that because they're tragic. Each one represents a different way that good intentions, incredible power, and human psychology can combine to create something that threatens the entire world. Maybe that's what makes them so compelling. They're not perfect heroes or irredeemable villains. They're warnings about what happens when ordinary people gain the power to reshape reality, while keeping all the flaws, fears, and desires that make them human. In the end, their greatest enemy isn't the world government, the emperors, or each other. It's the mirror, showing them what they've become in pursuit of what they thought they wanted to be. So after seeing these psychological profiles, which supernova do you think has the most exploitable weakness? And more importantly, do you think any of them can overcome their fatal flaws? Or are they doomed to be destroyed by the very powers that made them legends? Let me know in the comments down below. Which supernova's fatal flaw hit you the hardest? Do you think their psychological weaknesses make them more compelling characters? If you enjoyed this deep dive into the worst generation's hidden vulnerabilities, smash that like button, subscribe for more One Piece psychological analysis, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next breakdown of why being powerful in the One Piece world is actually a curse disguised as a blessing. Until next time, remember, even the worst generation started as kids with dreams, and sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is make those dreams come true.